Welcome to this podcast. It's making me thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This episode 82. Today's guest is a veteran of stage and screen. He has guest starred in over 150 television shows, including Newhart, Growing Pains, Billions, and Crashing. And of course, he played George's boss, Rick Levitan, in the classic season 2 Seinfeld episode, The Revenge. Please welcome Fred Applegate. Fred, thanks for joining.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Fred, welcome to the program. I mean, yeah, one of the greatest characters to ever play Seinfeld, guest star. So take us back, 1991. Tell us a little bit about the audition. 30 years ago, can you believe it?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the audition process, how the role came about in The Revenge.
Well, as far as the writing, I don't know. The audition process was pretty standard, except it was just these people who I was very impressed with, which always makes me nervous. So because I was nervous, I decided to be as obnoxious as I possibly could, because that I can do in my sleep, according to my wife. And it seemed to work for them. So it turned out to be a fun audition and a fun week.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the guys, right when we see him the first time he's on the phone, he's being obnoxious, talking about Lake George and videotaping with the girl. I mean, right off the bat, we know who this guy is. Then Jason, obviously George, tells him off and quits. And we were just talking about before you came on, so when George comes back, your delivery, is that Costanza over there? While you're not even looking at him, you're looking the other way. I mean, it's just, incredible delivery. That whole scene, we were talking before, you pretty much steal the whole show. But, kind of take us through maybe, scene by scene, or just like, what was your memories of maybe that like boardroom scene, or, when you're, kind of calling out George for being in the room?
Well, I remember one thing they did ask was, they told me I was mispronouncing his name. It's Costanza.
Yes.
And I said, I know I'm mispronouncing his name. I hate him.
Good call. So you made that. That's awesome.
So it was just a little twist of the knife,
right,
into George. Is that Costanza? Yeah, but Jason's great. I worked with Jason years later in The Producers, the Mel Brooks musical, in Los Angeles. He and Marty Short were Nathan and Leo, and I was Franz, the playwright.
Oh wow, we knew you had that connection with The Producers. I guess we can maybe jump on that then, about working with Mel Brooks. I mean, that's got to be compared to working with Larry and then Mel Brooks with some legends, Newhart.
But jumping back to working with Larry, what I most remember of the week was Michael Richards. The scene where he pours the cement into the washing machine. That took about 4 hours to film. And a lot of the cast and crew and a couple of the casts from the studios on either side just came in to watch him, because it was 4 hours of absolute comic gold. Everything he did. And we had to be careful because we were laughing so loud. They kept telling us to shut up.
Yeah, that was, he actually brought a 60-pound bag of concrete to,
And he was fully padded from head to toe under his clothes. I mean, fully stunt padded. So he really threw himself around.
Incredible.
So 1991, again, the Revenge was the 12th episode ever of Seinfeld. They went on to do, around 180, several more, and became obviously one of the greatest shows of all time. But at that time, when you were trying out, or even when you were on the set, did you have that sense that it was a special show?
Yeah, you did. I mean, the chemistry among the cast, you could tell. But also, I had an advantage of, not being intimidated by them, because Julia is married to Brad Hall, who I worked with at the Guthrie. Michael Richards I had worked with at the Taper. So I had connections with the people on the show, and I had met Jason already. So it was more fun to play with people that you have some comfort level with.
Yeah, and Fred, actually they filmed that on your birthday, I believe. There's your 38th birthday.
Yeah.
It's funny, like you were 38. It felt like you had such a presence of like a 50-year-old, right? You know what I mean? Like you were a young guy and you were the boss, kind of just, it was just uncanny. But again, those guys were young too. Jason was probably early 30s at that point as well. But what are your? I mean, so you're probably a little comfortable there. It was your birthday, but what else can you tell us? I mean, the scenes with you and Julia were just, I mean, incredible. What do you remember about working with her? I know you know her husband, but
well, I know her husband. I sort of knew her socially, but she's filming the scene and everything she does. She's so direct, and she really looks right into your soul. It's not that kind of actor looking at you. She almost makes you nervous because she's so present and so real. It really ups everybody's game. I mean, working with her makes you look better.
Yeah, it almost seemed like, and I'm sure we've talked to so many guest stars, and I ask this question all the time, and it always gets answered with the same thing. But I'll try it again. It seemed like she was ad-libbing, or even you guys were kind of just going back and forth. I mean, she's just that great of an actor. It was just written that way because it was kind of like she was coming up with ideas, and she's like, "Oh, I'm naked, naked, naked." But it just seemed like you guys were, like you said, it wasn't forced at all. It's like you were kind of just playing with each other and almost like ad-libbing. Was that written the way it was written, or do you remember doing anything different as far as that scene goes?
I remember it being pretty tightly written.
Yeah, that's what we know.
And although, if you really honor the writing, if you honor the writers and really try to get underneath what they were writing, it becomes more natural. It becomes what you'd say. If you understand what they're saying, it becomes what you're saying. There are actors who will immediately try to change things because it doesn't make sense to them, or I don't think I'd say that. Well, I think the writer has the right to say, I think you do. I think you would say it. I think you'd say it exactly that way.
Yeah, I mean the loser speech is a perfect example of that, right? You will always be a loser. The way you enunciate it, it's like you said, you got the guy down. You knew you didn't like George, and you just went at it. Can you talk about? I mean, that was a great monologue there.
Yeah. Well, the only thing with that was word for word the way it was written, because the writing on that show obviously was extraordinary. The only things about them that you could play with really are rhythms. And I tried to give them a slightly unexpected rhythm where, I was really just sort of crushing George under my thumb. And it's more delicious when you crush someone slowly. This is a horrible thing to say. But I wanted to make it clear that he had to stand there and take it. That's how dominant I was. If I just said it quickly and he ran out of the room, it wouldn't have been as painful.
Incredible. Yes, that's an incredible take.
So, Fred, you brought up like you have to know where the writing comes from just a minute ago. So, again, this was early years of Seinfeld, right? I mean, they kind of didn't hit their mark yet, but it sounds like you knew what Larry David was trying to get across. And I guess this story actually happened to Larry. Like, did he kind of tell you guys that on set, kind of the history behind the story, how he quit with Dick Ebersol at SNL? Any backstory there?
Not really. I think we all knew, but they were pretty hands off, letting the mix happen. They had some really specific visual things, like don't stand up on that word, stand up on that word, for the rhythm of the scene. And that was pretty early in my TV career. And after a while, you realize that they're establishing a visual rhythm that enhances the comic rhythms. And if you're if you're just inexperienced, you think it's oppressive. And the more you work, the more you get to see how really good directors work. You realize that they're helping you. They're visually by letting the rhythm come to you.
So was that Sharonis that was doing that directing?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we're big fans.
Well, no, he did. He had a beast of a script to shoot because he had so many different locations and he had so many setups, and he had Michael Richards, which alone is, a full week.
Right.
So you were there on set the whole time, right? You mentioned you saw the Kramer scenes. You were kind of laughing your head.
Actually, I came in that day, even though I wasn't called that afternoon, because I knew Michael was going to do slapstick, and it's worth seeing. So I came in an extra day.
That's awesome.
You didn't want to miss it.
I didn't want to miss it, and I'd worked with Michael in the theater. And also it was a fun place to be. The set was a fun place to hang out.
I can imagine.
And Fred, you're a Maplewood, New Jersey native, so you have that kind of Northeast New Yorker in your blood. Yankee fan?
Yeah.
And it's funny though, the scene at the bar kicks off and you're talking about the infield. I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, my mother took me to my first Yankee game in 1962 when I was 9 years old. And I saw Maris and Mantle both hit home runs. So yeah, Yankees. It's in my blood.
All the way through. It's so, yeah, I mean, and baseball has such a unique tie to the show. Larry, obviously, huge Yankee fan, and he kind of tried to weave that in.
Yeah, this episode, The Revenge, had George's famous, I like sports. Maybe I could do something in sports, be a general manager of a baseball team. I mean, one of the greatest George scenes ever you're a part of. And, it's also, as O'Hara mentioned, I mean, this was Larry David's first solo writing credit as far as the show goes. And then the other kind of main kind of topic for Seinfeld, fans is the Newman. I mean, Newman is mentioned but not seen in this episode. I believe it's Larry David's voice. I don't know if that was something that was aware to you at the time, if Larry David was doing that off camera, that wasn't even done during, the week you were there. But it was always interesting to me that I guess they didn't have the character fully flushed out yet. And they just, they kind of just threw this character Newman out there and let just a voice be there. But I don't know if that was like talked about or anything like that.
Not that I remember.
Yeah.
It was 30 years ago and I'm old. So.
No, I know. Just throwing it out there.
So Fred, you obviously kind of grew up on the stage and then did a lot of television, then kind of back to the stage and musicals, Mel Brooks. But I guess, and obviously worked on a lot of sitcoms. Just getting back to Seinfeld, Jerry always talks about it. It's kind of a homemade show. It was kind of just Jerry, Larry, Tom Sharonis. I know Larry Charles was on the set then, but what do you remember about that? Just that show, the set, how it was kind of different and kind of small, if you will, compared to some of the other shows you worked on?
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of network people, as I remember. And whenever, I think this is especially applies to Jerry. Comedy is a serious business. What I mean by that is there are so many aspects, especially on film, of what makes something funny. You have to think on so many different levels that you have to think seriously about it. And there are a lot of comedians who have shows on television who on the set seem very serious. And it's because they're trying to think of the whole product. And this was early on, so they're all still trying to invent the product. So there would be meetings with Larry and Jerry and Tom that were sort of in a huddle about something going on. And even at that point in my career, I knew I didn't want to be anywhere near that. They will figure out what they want. They will communicate it to me. I will try to do it. That's all I have to worry about.
Oh, interesting. And you did it. I mean, we were talking about, you basically steal the entire show just from the scenes you're in, as far as like, you said the way, because here's the thing, it's early on, and we're big fans of early on. I mean, season 2, I don't think it's enough recognition. I love season 2. I mean, it's up there. I mean, pound for pound, it's one of the best seasons. But 2 through 5 especially. But they're still developing those characters, right? So George, we call him the loser George, right? When George is, and this was like the height of loser George. I mean, he just quit his job and he's literally called a loser, probably for the first time. And like you said, the way you do it, the way you deliver it, how you slow it down, and just really like put him under your thumb. I think whatever happened on that audition or on set, you got it. And I mean, it definitely shows through that. You had a big part in sort of developing that character. It would have been great. I mean, because he keeps that job sort of. He does real estate for a few other episodes. I mean, it would have been great if there was a sort of a recurring there with you as the boss. It would have been fun to see, because you really the dynamic there was really, really good. I don't know if that.
Well, a lot of television, to a less extent theater, a lot of television is a very happy accident, and it's like, you almost don't want to go back to the well, because it's never going to be as good.
Right, it's like lightning in a bottle.
Fresh, and it was sort of, I wasn't second guessing anything. I wasn't really overthinking anything. I was just sort of going with an impulse. And one of the hard things about being a series regular is you do have to go back to that well every week, and it's a trap to fall into tricks, to do the same basic performance you did the week before because you trust it. Right. And when shows really take off, it's because, well, like Seinfeld is a particular example of none of them settling for what they were happy with last week. They all pushed and grew and changed, and the relationships became more dynamic. And those silly little celebration things, the jumping up and down and all that stuff seemed so real.
Right.
But it was so carefully planned, because they didn't settle. I think they're all great.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah, and you mentioned when you hopped on that kids recognize you in New York on the subway. I'm just curious. What do you hear from them? Like, is that Costanza over there? Like, what are some of the famous lines that you kind of hear from fans today?
Actually, most of the young people who recognize me on the subway, first of all, are great at recognizing people. They should work for the FBI, because it was 30 years ago.
Right.
I think my hair has changed the color a bit. They generally just ask me very politely and very quietly, "Were you on Seinfeld?" And I said, "Yeah, I talked to them, And then when they get off, I said, stop binging old TV shows and go to class. But it's they're usually just very polite and very excited to have some connection. Can I tell you a little story?
Yes, yeah. Of course.
When my daughter was working in DC, she said, "You want to go get frozen yogurt?" And I said, "Okay." She said, "But I want to go to a specific place, and it's kind of far." I said, "Whatever." So we went, and we go in, and the guy was such a Seinfeld fan that if you brought in someone who'd been on Seinfeld, you got free frozen yogurt for a week. And that's the only reason she wanted to bring me to this yogurt place. My daughter used me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Non-fat yogurt?
I think it's still there. It's called Mr. Yogato in DC.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, like Tony mentioned, I think the beauty of the show was the unselfishness, and that they let guest stars like you, and I know Patricia Darbo's done an episode, like really shine. And I think that's a credit to just Larry and Jerry at the core of the show, to help actors like you just kind of to shine and essentially outshine the main cast, which is tough to do sometimes, but you definitely did it, Fred.
Oh, well, okay. I don't think so. But one of the things that they were, Jerry's comedy is reactive. It's based on his reaction to things. Even his stand-up,
right,
is he'll tell a story about something, and he'll tell a story about his reaction to it. And they're all great reactive comedic, comic dependence people. And so they want to be fed because it's their reaction that pushes the comedy.
Right.
And I think they're all smart enough to realize that. And so when someone came in that was feeding them something that was delicious for them because it gave them fuel. It also gave them, and we were just talking about keeping it fresh and, not going back to your old tricks. If you're really listening to what someone's bringing and really responding to it, you can't have done those things before, because this is someone talking to you for the first time. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, they were very smart.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting because, as you mentioned earlier, how you got the character and you were able to pronounce the name wrong, right, and slow down your cadence to really hammer in the point. I'm wondering, we kind of glossed over, but I know it's 30 years ago, but I mean, the audition, I'm wondering what they saw, because we always talk to these guys, like O'Hara said, every guest actor has been, they let them shine. And I think a lot of it has to do with the casting. I mean, they picked the right person for the job and they must see it at some point. I don't know if that was, Mark Hirschfeld that did that for you, or if you remember the audition of what like clicked, if you remember the scene or anything like that, or just you just got it and we're like, okay, this guy definitely hates George and loves being the boss. I mean, there had to be an in somewhere that you saw and then kind of expanded on it, but it definitely showed throughout the scenes.
The auditions are weird. Most of them just disappear in a fog after you leave the room because they're so stressful, especially when you're starting out. Because you don't really know what they want. You don't really know how to give it to them. You don't really know why you're an actor. It's almost every audition is an existential crisis of some kind. But I went in just, the way I read the character, the guy's just a dick. And I just said, I did it that way. And
Right.
I think that's what the direction they wanted to go. And in the rehearsals for the scenes, it grew, and they helped me to focus it a little. And I made some more choices then. But
well, Fred, I wrote jerk, not dick, on the notepad here. But
jerk.
But I feel like you turn it around at the end, and you kind of become a lovable boss. Like, how you blew that McConnell deal, I'll never know. Like, that's just incredible line.
We all love his antics around the office.
Yeah, well, it's interesting the way that their strategy backfired, and I think that's part of the good writing, is that they're trying to torment me and punish me, but Julia winds up charming me, not annoying me, and making me so happy that I see George and I just see the absurdity of it. And I'm just about to give him his job back, so their elaborate plan backfires on every possible level. I mean, George is a loser at planning revenge. I mean,
right. It was almost like their plan should have been Julia should get you happy to get him his job back. That's what worked, but they did it the other way.
But that's not the way those people think.
Right.
And consistently in the whole show, they don't think like normal people.
Right. And it's interesting too, like the we're talking about Seinfeld is, it's groundbreaking. The things that were going on in this episode were not going on sitcoms in 1989, 1990, 1991, right? So, I mean, there's a dark episode. You got Newman jumping off the building, and that's just a joke because he doesn't actually kill himself, obviously. And then you got talking about, I tied her up. I took video of her in the Lake George, and you got, George slipping you a Mickey. These things weren't on TV really on sitcoms at the time, especially, we talked about the shows you were on. A lot of them are family friendly and things like that. So was there anything, that struck you in that way where you're like, well, there's something different. We're getting somewhere now. Was that kind of what intrigued you, or was it just,
I thought a lot of things they did were surprisingly honest, because it's something a person might do, even though it's a little questionable. Like, obviously, Jerry and Michael should not have put cement in a washing machine as revenge. That's wrong. It's wrong. And they did it gleefully and paid the price. I mean, obviously they came back around when they realized that they were mistaken.
Right.
But even were they not mistaken, the guy had stolen the money. It's a terrible thing to do.
Right.
So they're doing bad things and paying the price. But you sort of believe that an average person could get to a point where they would make that choice. And that was kind of the beauty of the show. I mean, they do a lot of the things they did in the show, and I'm not a Seinfeld expert, but I did watch it, are stupid. It's just
right.
stupid.
Well, they're childish. They're
childish, but
they're petty. But yeah,
you believe that these people would together think this was a good idea.
But that, that's the genius of Larry David. It's all rooted in things that happened to him, essentially. So, and he was able to kind of spin that into a story across 4 characters. So, what's in the water in Maplewood, Fred? I mean, you got Max Weinberg, Elizabeth Shue, and yourself. So, incredible talent coming out of the Columbia High School. Did you guys ever connect?
No, I mean, we're, like anyone growing up who desires a career in the arts, like most people, especially want to be an actor, you want to get on a rocket ship and get as far away from home as you can, so you can reinvent yourself without anybody looking over your shoulder. But these, it was a remarkable high school in a lot of ways. We churned out some people who were just really serious about being successful. And one of the things about being successful is that you really have to be committed. You have to be desperate to be successful, because it's possible. I mean, I'm not a superhero, but I mean, it's hard to succeed in this, right. And most people don't. But you have to be, you have to have a feeling that there is no backup plan. This
right,
is
you can't be half in.
No,
it's interesting too. Your career has been, incredible. So many different things, and for so long. What do you enjoy more? Is it the stage? Is it the Broadway, or is it TV, film? I'm just curious. I know you've done so much. It's just worked with so many talented people. What is I'll let you tell me, but I've heard different. The stage, you're doing it live, in front of people. It has to be exhilarating.
I do particularly love the stage. I don't feel as alive when I'm doing 8 shows a week. I feel really alive, because it's so risky and it's all on you. I mean, everyone is looking at you. Everyone can see you. You're never off camera. You're there. And generally the writing's pretty good. But looking back, I used to think, well, I like TV. No, I like theater better. No, I like musicals. No, I like plays. I like them all if they're good.
Right.
You get involved with the project and you think, well, I'm not going to be that good, but I'm here. And TV, the same thing. You get to the table reading and you think, okay, this is going to be a long week, but I have 3 children, and a week not working is an even longer week. So, but Seinfeld, brilliant writing and really talented actors who mostly came from the theater, by the way. That I enjoyed very much. And, it's similar like working with on Mrs. Maisel. Good quality show, really serious set, good work. That was enjoyable.
Yeah, you're in a bunch of recent hits. Mrs. Mabel, like you said, Billions, Crashing was, Pete Holmes was a great show.
Yeah, it was a great show. He's a really interesting guy. He's very tall.
Yeah, he's very tall. Yep. Have you ever listened to his podcast, by the way? The You Make It Weird. I liked his podcast a lot. He was very, that show was good. And he had his own show that Conan produced. The late night show was great. They actually had a Seinfeld bit on that. I don't know if,
he did one of the episodes we did. The character was trying to MC Christian variety show or stand-up things, and he brought in a couple busloads of evangelical Christians as the audience, and he did a warm-up and had them on the floor with this warm-up about evangelical Christianity.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that's A, really risky, B, really hard to do, and really funny.
Yeah, that's his background, right? He was very, very religious. I know they did that on the show as well. They made it into a thing, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of religious, Fred, you've been blessed. You mentioned your 3 children. You mentioned 150 episodes on TV. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned your daughter bringing you to the ice cream shop because of Seinfeld. I'm just curious, and listen, producer's done a ton, but do people recognize you most? Is that the most memorable out of the 150 you've done?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. No question about it. Yeah.
Night Court, nothing else gets love.
Yeah. Well, Night Court gets a little love, but I bounce around as characters on a Night Court. And, I used to get asked a lot when my kids were little. I recurred on Growing Pains, and I was on the first episode that Leonardo DiCaprio was on. It was his TV debut. I think he was 16, and a couple of them aired, and I was at the petting zoo with my kids. I had to leave because everyone wanted to know what Leonardo DiCaprio was like.
That was right. I remember that.
Yeah.
Wow. But it's funny you mentioned that. Like, there's you mentioned Growing Pains and obviously the Leo connection, but there's something about Seinfeld, right? Like the episode where George quit. Like people just remember those specific moments. Like, what is it about it?
People remember the name of the episode.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even know episodes have names.
Right.
Yeah,
you're that guy in Seinfeld. The guy you fired George and the Revenge.
Right.
I can't believe I've even saying the word Mickey. You got a Mickey guy? I mean, there's so many great lines in that episode.
Rick Barr Properties. I mean,
Case Electronics has the bathroom you wanted him to share with.
Yeah,
that sets up the George bathroom character. By the way, talk about setting the character. This was a major stepping stone in setting George up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was fun.
This was fun too. We really appreciate it, Fred.
Oh, my pleasure. One more story for Larry David.
Definitely.
I did an episode of Remington Steele.
Yes.
When I first gotten out to California, I think it was like 86. And it was a fantasy baseball camp. And the baseball players they hired were Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford. And I found out we were actually playing baseball with them. I was the catcher. Mickey was at bat, and Whitey Ford was pitching.
Wow.
Now, I've been a Yankee fan since I was 9.
Holy cow.
It was very exciting. First of all, you never saw so many agents come to see us taping an episodic. Everybody wanted to check on how their client was doing. And by the way, where's Mickey? So I was there catching, and I said to Mickey, I'm not a baseball player. I don't know. I'm not a catcher. And he said, just hold the glove up and Whitey will throw the ball in it. I said, yeah, that makes sense. And as he was about to hit, he said, besides, I don't miss.
That's amazing.
The Mick.
Yeah. That's awesome.
No, they were both great guys, but for a Yankee fan, you can't imagine. Well, you can.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible. Did you share that story with Larry when you were on set?
No, I actually didn't see Larry very much. I mean, they were all very busy creating
Right.
a work of genius. And a lot of times on a sitcom, if you don't hear from people, you're fine.
That makes sense.
True.
They've got other fires to put out.
Well, Fred, listen, like I said, you've blessed us with this appearance on Seinfeld and just many others. Keep up the good work, and hats off.
Thank you. I've been very fortunate, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Fred. This was great.
Thanks.
This was so much fun. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.